Hello and welcome back. This is Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana, and you are watching Marksman TV. Today's video is a tabletop review and comparison of the brand new 2.0 Shield by Smith Wesson and the original Shield by Smith Wesson. We will move through the general characteristics and details of both, giving you a comparison of exactly what it is that they changed on the newer model. If that sounds interesting to you, please stick around. That's coming up now. Now, starting off with the unboxing here, and I will move through this pretty quickly. The packaging and everything is actually identical. So jumping in here, we do have the Shield 2.0 and a little plastic sleeve with a chamber flag. We will go ahead and remove that, setting this aside. First, there is a 8-round extended magazine inserted, and you do have the flush 7-round magazine here, as well as your paper instructions, documentation, and there is a gun safety lock here. Now again, moving into the original Shield, it's all identical. I'm not going to go through all that again, but you have the handgun, 2 magazines, instruction manual, gun safety lock, and yeah, that's basically it. Alright, now jumping into general specifications of the two, the specs really didn't change at all in terms of size and weight. We do have an overall length of 6.1 inches, and it does have a 3.1 inch barrel. It is 4.4 inches tall with the flush magazine inserted, and with the extended magazine inserted, it is 4.9 inches tall. Now, the weight as measured is 20.8 ounces here on the original Shield. Now, when we go to the 2.0, that weight is increased very, very slightly to 21 ounces, so only 0.2 ounces heavier. But just feeling the two hand in hand, you really honestly cannot feel a difference. It could just be any kind of slight variation on the scale that gave that, but for all intents and purposes, the specifications are pretty much the same. Starting off with the slides, I will go ahead and bring this in close to you. Bringing this in close to you, I do have the original Smith & Wesson Shield. It does have a stainless steel machined slide, which uses Smith & Wesson's Armonite finish, which is basically Smith & Wesson's name for melanite finish. Here on the rear, we do have the iconic fish scale slide serrations. You do have these nice little machining cuts here, and then you have the Smith & Wesson graphics here on this side, and then this is our exposed extractor on the side here as well. On the opposite side as well, the fish scale serrations with the Smith & Wesson M&P logo and the M&P Shield 9mm, and basically the caliber designation will be over here as well. So moving in here to the top of the firearm, of course we do see this loaded chamber indicator in the form of a porthole, which is machined right into the slide. If you are in good enough lighting, if you have a round chamber, you will see that brass shining back at you. That's an indication, of course, that your chamber is loaded. The one drawback to that, though, is if you are in very low light or in the dark, that's not going to be beneficial to you. So it doesn't have that type of chamber indicator that actually gives you a protrusion that you can feel, by brushing over it, of course, if you can't see that. Right up here is our caliber designation. Of course, this is a 9mm. They also make this the standard model in a 40. And also they came out with a version in the 45. Now, the 45 was not designated the 2.0, but it was really just the Shield 45, but its characteristics are more reminiscent of a 2.0. I don't have one of those in a video, but hopefully I will do one soon, but you can check that out online as well. Moving in here to the rear, you do have steel sloped sights. They do not have a shelf for one-handed chambering or racking of the slide. They are dovetailed in and windage adjustable. You do have a little retaining pin here in the back. They are not elevation adjustable. Up here in the front, you also have your front sight post, which is also dovetailed and can be drifted for windage adjustments. Now, the sights themselves are in a 3-dot configuration. The visibility of those little dots is very nice. They are painted in and do a very good job of allowing your eye to quickly pick up on them. Now, moving into the 2.0, we're going to see a lot of similarities. Of course, the general dimensions and size are pretty much the same. You do have the holdover of the fish scale slide serrations in the rear. This is really indicative, unless you're looking at a Smith & Wesson. This is pretty common design featuring on Smith firearms. Of course, you have your exposed extractor here, and one added benefit are fish scale slide serrations up here in the front. Now, the benefit of that is to allow you to get a good positive grip for press checking. I would, on semi-automatic concealed carry guns, you usually shy away from doing that as much as possible, at least up at the front, because you are very close to the muzzle and you don't want to accidentally slip and put your hands in front of the muzzle. Now, you do have your Smith & Wesson graphics here. And on this side as well, you do have the fish scale slide serrations up here on the front as well as in the rear. Smith & Wesson model there, and then the M&P 9 Shield and M 2.0 right here. That's a quick way that you can tell that this is the 2.0. Now up here at the top, this is going to look almost identical to the other shield we looked at. You still have your porthole for your loaded chamber indicator. Caliber designation, of course, this is a 9mm. They do also have this in a 40 available in the market now. Now again, that 45 is not necessarily part of the 2.0 family, but the characteristics of the 45 are very similar to this firearm. Your sights are also steel in construction and they are dovetailed in place. They can be drifted for windage adjustments. They are not elevation adjustable. Pretty much the exact same thing in a 3-dot configuration. Now moving on to the trigger, and this is one of the big advantages on the new 2.0. So we're starting off here with the original Shield. Go ahead and give this a pull. So you do see the little hinge mechanism there. That is how Smith & Wesson has always incorporated their trigger safety. So you see that hinge point, and the bottom of the trigger rotates on that hinge point. If you pull from up here, for example, it will not fire. You might be able to see a little lever in there that moves out of the way as you rotate that lever. That will allow you then to pull the trigger through. They also know that as a drop safety, indicative of what you see on Glocks, which is usually a little tab sticking out here on the front. It works almost within the same fashion, but just keeps it safe. As long as you have that trigger covered by your favorite carry holster, you're pretty much in business and good to go. Now going ahead and getting into the pull here, we'll go ahead and start with a little bit of take up right there, just a little bit of travel until you hit that wall. Now pulling through that wall, you're going to be looking at about 5.5 to 6.5 pounds, where you get that nice positive break. A little bit of travel after the break. Now looking into the reset, we'll go ahead and start pulling off just slightly. And right there you heard that audible click, and then right from the reset you are staged and ready to go again at about 5.5 to 6.5 pounds. So one of the major drawbacks on this is that a lot of people say that they are somewhat gritty feeling, almost like they put sandpaper or something in there. Just a little bit of a gritty feel to it, not the most smooth option in the world, and I know a lot of people like to put Tapco triggers in there to make them a little bit more smooth and polished feeling with a much cleaner break and reset. Now moving into the 2.0, which I have right here, Smith & Wesson really did answer the call on that. So again, the trigger setup here, and again, they are both polymer in construction, the 2.0 and the standard trigger as well. You do see that hinge point as well. And there is a little over travel stop in the back that they've added right there, just to stop a little bit of that over travel. But if we start to go into a pull, we have about the same amount of take up, but the pressure required is a little bit less at about 5 to 6 pounds, so about 0.5 pound on average. Not a huge difference, but you do feel it. Going ahead and pulling through, really nice clean snap. I mean, you just don't feel much grittiness in there, and of course you hit that over travel stop. Now getting back into the reset, of course, we'll just start to let go, and right there, you hear that click, nice and reset, just again really smooth into a clean break. I think noticeably different. You don't have as much of a gritty feel. Just definitely an improvement to me. I don't know what they've done specifically to improve the trigger. Now one thing that they did say is that on the 2.0s they did include some sort of audible reset, I'm using air quotes there, where you can hear audibly that reset, which, I mean, you heard right there, which I don't disagree with. But moving back here, this is the original Shield. Again, that reset, I mean, the audible click is just as loud in my opinion. I don't know if it's just a fluke with these two particular pistols I'm looking at, but I don't see much of a difference there. Now, the disassembly is exactly the same on the two. I'm going to go ahead and show you the disassembly of the 2.0, but we will go ahead and remove the mag and check that we're clear, and we are. Going ahead and opening this slide to the rear, there is a takedown lever here on the left-hand side, which I will go ahead and throw down into the 6 o'clock position. This one's pretty stiff. Now, then you can go ahead and put tension on the slide and release it, allowing it to just drop just flush there into position. Now, it is locked in place. There is a striker release lever on the inside, which you can actuate with a punch, so you don't have to pull the trigger. It doesn't really concern me that much. Some people might disagree, but I go ahead and just pull the trigger to drop the striker, and then I can remove the frame and the slide from one another. Now, here underneath, we do have a double guide rod and recoil spring system, which is essentially the same as on the original. And then you have the barrel slide, and then there is your disassembled shield. Okay, now let's go ahead and talk about the frames, which is where we're going to find some other differences. Now here on the original, just like the original Smith & Wesson M&Ps, you do have a very smooth texturing here. Now the shields do not come with interchangeable back straps like the larger counterparts like the M&P C or the full-size guns do. And that is true on both the 2.0s and on the original version. So we do have a very nice flat texturing here with just a little bit of a beaver tail here to give you a nice little bit of coverage here on the top of the web of your hand. On this side, of course, you see the opposite end of the magazine release. Now flipping it over, of course, this is your takedown lever. This is your slide stop and magazine release here as well. Now the magazine release is not reversible, so it is only going to be really strictly usable by a right-handed shooter to get to with that thumb there. As mentioned before, the trigger is polymer in construction, as is the general assembly of the frame. Now all of your internal components are basically an embedded steel chassis, so your guide rails right here for the slide are steel in construction. You do have a little reinforcing steel rib here as well. Ejector, steel in construction, slide stop, trigger bar, all of that, all those components that need that extra reinforcing has been done. So this actually is a very durable frame. So here things have been done a little bit differently. Again, we don't have those interchangeable back straps, but you do see that more aggressive texturing that you see on the other 2.0 line firearms. The magazine release is still polymer in construction and is still not reversible, but it does have a steel core. So the internal steel core of the mag release, again, is now steel. So you do have that reinforcement. Trigger is still polymer as it was on the original. You do have your slide takedown lever. Now back here, you will see a safety, which we didn't show you on the original Shield, but you can get this with or without that safety, a little safety lever there. So those options are both available to you. Here is your slide release, just like on the original Shield. On this side as well, you see the exact same texturing, and it's pretty plain on this side. Now we do have that over travel stop, which I talked about when we talked about the trigger. All of your components on the inside are fairly reminiscent of the original Shield as well. You have that reinforced rib, steel guide rods, ejector, trigger bar, slide stop. All that is done in steel as it should be, and you have that extra reinforcement where it's needed. Finishing off here with the barrels, I cannot tell you any differences between the two. Of course, they are stainless steel and machined. They do have polished feed ramps. The only real difference I can find between the two is the font in which 9mm is stamped up here on the top. Bringing those in, you can just see the difference in the font. The one on the bottom here that I'm shaking is the new 2.0, and the one on the top is the original Shield. So if you have two, you take them apart like I just did, and you have trouble figuring out which one goes to which, like I am now. Basically, the one with the more, I guess, sharper, cleaner font to me is the 2.0 barrel. I have not found any research or literature on Smith & Wesson's webpage or on other forums or anything that speaks to any actual functional differences between the two barrels like there is between the Glock Gen 5 and the Gen 4. But other than that, yeah, just simple, straightforward, and they get the job done. They always have in the original Shield, and I am sure they will continue to in the 2.0. Now to recap on these two in terms of different options on the market, the 2.0 is of course now offered in 9mm and 40. If you want that original 45, which is very indicative of the 2.0, that is also an option available to you as well. So you have those three calibers to choose from. Now you can get this with or without the thumb safety. So here's the thumb safety on this model. You can also get the original Shield with or without the thumb safety. This one does not have the thumb safety. This one here, however, does. So you do have that thumb safety option to you as well on the original Shield. Same as on the 2.0. Now, of course, the 2.0 is the newest member of the 2.0 family. So if you like all the features you heard about on this one, you have the same features on the full-size 2.0. They also just released, as of October 2017, the compact model as well. Of course, being part of the original generation or the original line, you also have available options at 940 and that newer 45, as well as the compact and full-size models, which they also have in 940 and 45. Now, in all three cases, the 45 in both the Shield, the compact, and the full-size, the 45 will be slightly a larger frame, but the 40 will be exactly the same frame that you see here. To wrap this up, usually the thing people are most interested in is the price. So typically when these were really on the prime in their market, which has been basically essentially up until now, these are the best-selling handguns on the market nationally, per a few reports. But And they're primed. These were found around $400. Now, I have seen prices on these dropping pretty drastically in about the past year. Now that the 2.0s are out, these are being kind of blown out on sale from a lot of wholesalers as they're kind of liquidating them to get into these. So good deals can be had on the Shield. Right now, retail anywhere from $300 to $350 is pretty standard. Now that's going to vary based on your area. Recently, they did run some promotions on some rebates on these, which I think were up to like 75 bucks. So even like we had these on sale for, I believe, $350 a few months ago when that rebate was going on. So with the rebate, people were getting them as low as $275. For that money, excellent value. Now these, of course, have just hit the market. They're sitting at about $400 to $450 retail. MSRP, I believe, is a little bit higher at like $489. I'll have to double check on that. If I'm wrong, I'll roll in something down here. So you are looking on average about $100 more expensive. So looking into that, is it worth it? Is the value worth it? Well, I've laid out the key features of both. Really, the big advantages that you are getting in the 2.0 is you do get a lot more nice aggressive texturing. Now, to me, I do not like aggressive texturing. To me, this is not overboard. It's actually, for somebody like me who likes a more clean texturing, I actually do like this texture more than on here. I think it gives you just enough grip where it's needed, especially as a concealed carry handgun, where if you're going to be using it, you're probably going to be using it in a high stress situation. Also, you'll need to get a good positive grip on it to grab a holster. Plus, if this is sitting underneath your shirt line, I bet you it would snag onto your shirt pretty well, at least keeping your shirt tail down, keeping this covered. So that's a good feature there as well. The other thing is the trigger. The trigger is not a massive improvement in my opinion, but it is definitely an improvement. If you have been carrying the original Shield for years and you are used to that trigger, and it's something that maybe you complained about it from the get-go, but it's something that you've gotten used to and are proficient with, then, and the trigger isn't really a huge issue to you, then maybe the extra $100, especially if you already own a Shield, selling it and then taking the loss on that as a used firearm and then putting in the extra $100 for an upgrade. Not so sure that I personally would do that, but if you haven't owned a Shield yet and you are looking to buy your very first one, maybe for that extra $100, an upgraded trigger and grip is good value. Keep in mind those Tapco triggers were like 80 bucks if I'm not mistaken, so you're pretty much getting that trigger for that 80 bucks plus a better grip. Well, that is all the time I have for you today on these. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking us out. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by hitting that like button. If you want to see more tabletop reviews and comparisons like this, please consider subscribing to our channel for more content. Again, this is Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV. We will see you next time.